Hello, my name is M. Jason Graham, and this is Writing. This is Writing is brought to you by mjgstorycreation.com. Go to mjgstorycreation.com for hints and tips on how to turn your idea into an epic story today. So we have reached the final episode of This is Writing, and we are ending with Act 4, of course, Evolution, where we show how our character Javon has gathered all of the resources and his knowledge and experience to overcome his stumbling block and evolve into the person that he needs to be. When we last left off, Javon and Max had exited to a car. So we go with bookend number 7. And bookend number 7, of course, we see that they arrive at a hospital. Javon is actually walking into a hospital room, and there he sees one of the tunnel boys in serious condition, and Inuto standing over him. And so what we have now is a situation where hustle matters. So there's some urgency in being able to address the plot or whatever the issue is in the story. In this particular case, the Queen Mother must be stopped or thwarted. And so in order to do that first, he has to get back the foils. And in order to do that, the first thing is to confess the stumbling block. So he apologizes to Inuto for the trouble that he has caused indirectly, of course, and him not appreciating that it is illegal to be anything other than straight in the African country. The next person that he runs into is actually James at the cafe, and he apologizes to James for causing the embarrassment of his party. And so him and James talk for a little bit about his father, Io, and a lot is revealed there as far as James's fears, which he has set aside now because he realizes that he doesn't have to be the man that his father is. Javon gets back to the royal palace, and he talks to Maruka and apologizes to her for the embarrassment that he has caused the family directly by not respecting their traditions, not taking them seriously. And so she forgives him, and because of that, she explains to him precisely why the Queen Mother hired him instead of somebody more qualified to teach sign language, and it was because she felt that she could control him, and use him to control Io to a certain extent. So, with everybody gathered, Inuto reveals that the Queen Mother's plan is to actually present a project or give a presentation on how the land for the tunnels should be used or leased to a Belgian corporation. And so they have to come up with a plan to stop her. And the fact that Io doesn't have clout with the council is particularly after this debacle has happened, and the family name is kind of being smeared right now in the media. So Maruka happens to be a architect, and that's what she was before she got married to Io. And she actually has plans for a school. So they come up with the idea of presenting the plans and creating a performing arts school based upon the performance that the Tunnel Boys gave at the birthday party. So that's rallying the communities. And so they gather their resources in order to put together a presentation in 3 days. The next thing that has to be done, of course, is that they have to run the obstacle course, and do the actual presentation. So the Queen Mother gives her presentation first, and then James gives an impromptu presentation at the end, and then also details the sordid history of the company that the Queen Mother wants to lease the property to. Rabbit Defense, of course, is our antagonist's last-ditch effort to overwhelm the offensive of the protagonist. And so the Queen Mother immediately goes into stoking images of Sodom and Gomorrah and attempts to a veiled threat at Io and the council that they must return to traditional values and disconnect themselves from Dravan, who has obviously poisoned our youth. And so not only should he be escorted out, but he should be sent on the first plane back to the U.S. Io sits and contemplates resolution. As Io sits and contemplates the situation, James Dravan nods at James for the final gambit, and James goes and opens the council doors and lets in the party attendees. So all of the children that attended James's party that were the heirs to the royal heirs, and also the politicians, sons and daughters of politicians, as well as the tunnel kids. And so James gives a rousing speech about how this decision should be made with them, because it is their future and it is a legacy that will be passed to them. So the new reputation, the final decision, Io rules that the decision will wait until the complex can be fully vested. Of course, the Queen Mother is beside herself, and she loses herself and speaks out of turn. And for the first time in the movie, we see the regalness of Io as he shuts her down and then addresses the council, stating that they need to decide if they're willing to invest in their future or if we are going to the same avenue that other African countries have gone in having giving the land to them in order to invest in. From here, we see that an unidentified man exits the chamber, looks at the Queen Mother and exits the chamber in disgust. She's pretty upset. And then we see Io and James together as father and son, and Maruka actually hugs Dravan and thanks him for the work that he did. A couple of months later, Inuto and the teens are breaking ground on the dormitory, which is going to be the first building in the Performing Arts Center. We also see Dravan take a oath of loyalty or fealty to King Io and the council. And then 2 years in the future, Dravan is on the phone with Sandy in his new home on the royal estate. The commercial for the new performing arts complex is playing in the background as he walks past, and we see a singular frame sitting on the table, and it's an electronic picture frame, and it's flashing through new pictures of Dravan with the new organizations and the royal family here in Africa. The key thing to remember about your outline is that it is not supposed to be perfect, but it needs to give a clear sense of the theme, the character, and the action of the story. My name is M. Jason Graham, and this is Writing. This is Writing is brought to you by mjgstorycreation.com. Go to mjgstorycreation.com and get started on turning your idea into an epic story today. I'll see you next time.